I've seen many things in Red Hollow, but nothing chilled me as much as that beating of wings. The crows arrived on a cloudy morning, filling the sky like a living cloud. They didn't seek carrion. They didn't prowl the bones of the desert. They came to us, the living, and pecked not at flesh, but at something unseen. I witnessed it myself. A man was walking down the street when one of them landed on his shoulder. The beak didn't tear skin, didn't draw blood. What emerged was the gleam in his eyes, the will to exist. The man continued breathing, but empty, as if there were no one behind that body. People began to lock themselves in their homes, but it was no use. The crows knew their name. I heard them cawing on the roof of the hall, repeating human voices, calling each resident as if they were dead relatives. And every time someone opened the door, another soul was taken. My curse throbbed in my chest. The badge burned like fire against my skin. I knew this was no ordinary bird's work. There was intelligence in them, a command. I followed the tracks to the cemetery, and there I found it. A raven larger than all the others, with feathers as black as burnt iron, and eyes that reflected the moon in blood red. It stared at me as if it already knew me, and I understood. It was not just an animal. It was an ancient raven, summoned to carry the souls of the living to the afterlife. As the flock rose in fury, the sky became a starless night. I fired until my hands ached, but gunpowder doesn't silence creatures of hell. Then I raised the storm I cursed. Flaming Bajand, let my own curse speak. The ancient raven swooped down on me and pecked at my chest, but what it found was not a clean soul, but the darkness that has devoured me for years. It retreated, cawing like a man in agony, and took its brood with it. The city breathed a sigh of relief that night, but I fell to my knees, because part of me flew with them, and I know that one day, when the last raven returns, it will come for what remains of Elias Blackthorn. If you think you've heard it all, you're wrong, because the worst was yet to come. Stay with me until the end, and you'll understand the price a man must pay when facing the kind of darkness that not even death dares to claim. I'll never forget the first time I saw one of those crows actually attack. It wasn't like the usual attacks from hungry birds. There was no torn flesh or spilled blood. It was much worse. It was late afternoon, and I was walking down Red Hollow's main street when I heard a muffled scream coming from in front of the barber shop. I ran over, my hand already firmly on my holster, and found Tomas, a simple man in a worn hat and old boots, standing in the dust. A crow had landed on his shoulder, its beak pressed against his chest, right where his heart beats. There was no cut, no blood. Bah! I swear, I saw something invisible being ripped from him. A flash, a spark, as if it were the brilliance of his soul. Tomas remained standing, breathing, his eyes open. But it wasn't him anymore. Pugh's, once lively, was dull, as if his pupils had lost their color. His mouth murmured broken, meaningless sound. I could have sworn that amidst the whispers escaped the name of his mother, who had died 20 years ago the next day. It wasn't just Thomas. A woman named Eliza was seen at the market. 2 crows circled her head until one pecked directly into her eyes. She fell to her knees, not crying, not screaming, but staring into space, repeating the name of a son she never had. People who knew her assured her she never got pregnant. Even so, she kept murmuring, my boy, my boy." Within hours, reports spread throughout the town. Men, women, even children began to be attacked. They were uninjured. They continued walking, breathing, even eating. But their faces were hollow, like empty shells. Some sat for hours in the square, staring into space, like abandoned dolls. Others repeated names no one recognized. I even heard a child whisper, "Henry, Henry, Henry," but in Red Hollow, no one with that name existed. The city fell into panic. The church bells rang more than once, calling people to prayer. But even inside the house of God, crows perched on the roof, cawing as if mocking the prayers. I entered the church one night and saw 3 men on the floor, wide-eyed, breathing as if alive, but completely absent. They whispered in unison the name of someone I didn't know. The echo of their voices filled the temple like a macabre chant. No one knew what to do. The town doctors said there was no fever, no wound, nothing they could treat. The priests spoke of possession, and the elders said it was punishment. But I, cursed as I am, felt it went beyond any ordinary curse. It was as if something ancient, deep, had been awakened. The living remained standing, but what made them human was no longer there. Only breathing bodies remained, repeating names no one understood. And I knew that was just the beginning. My curse has a way of warning me when the night is about to bite deeper. It starts as a tingling below my collarbone, then turns into a rhythmic throb, beating in time with my heart. That week, the throb never stopped. The badge on my chest grew hot as if someone had lit a coal under the starlight. Every step I took down Red Hollow's main street was accompanied by a chorus of black wings overhead. And I knew this was no simple, hungry pack. They were watching me. They were thinking. They recognized something in me. I stopped in front of the empty saloon. I only had to lift my chin to see dozens of raven eyes staring at me from the eaves. The air tasted of iron and dust. I spoke softly, so no one but me could hear. "So you feel it, do you? The rust that runs in my blood." The ravens leaned in unison, as if they understood the language of the damned. One of them swooped down and landed on the post in front of me. It didn't peck. It didn't caw for nothing. It opened its beak, and for a second, I heard my own voice return to me, distorted Elias, as if my name had been swallowed by a well and spat back out. The star burned brighter. Instinctively, I clutched the metal to my chest. The glowing ember brought back memories I pretended to have forgotten. The night I received this curse. The pact I didn't ask for. The red eyes offering me survival in exchange for everything I was. What has lived within me ever since recognizes what inhabits these birds, and they recognize what dwells within me. Hunters scent hunters. Shadows greet shadows. I walked through the alleys, listening to the sound of wings. At every corner, the flock moved with me, like someone escorting a poisoned king to the throne. As I passed the church, the bells rang by themselves. I saw no sacristan, no wind. I saw only the ravens circling the tower and the metal of my star, now burning, responding to the rotation with beats that ached inside me. A call, a challenge. I decided to test what they wanted. I entered the cemetery, where the desert sand turned to silent mud. I took off my coat and opened my shirt until the star shone naked under the moon. "Look closely," I said. "Is this what you seek, or is it what you fear?" That's when the flock parted in two, like a curtain. A corridor of wings for me to pass through. Pressed my badge, accepted pain as my password, and advanced. With each step, the curse whispered names that weren't mine. Names of those who had already asked me for help too late. Names of those I couldn't save. And among these whispers was another ancient one. One I hadn't heard since before my life turned to hot iron. The call from the beyond. The ravens responded in chorus, not like animals, but like guards following orders. I was the intruder bearing the same mark as their master, an imposter in the center of the cemetery. The ground was churned, as if someone had stirred fresh earth with enormous fingers. The air vibrated. The star turned white, almost translucent from the heat. The crows didn't attack. They just waited quietly for me to understand. This wasn't about meat. It, mine, and read hollows. They wanted to make sure I paid mine before trying to stop the town from paying theirs. It was then that I spoke in a firm voice, so that the night could hear me. I know you see me inside. I know what I am. But as long as I draw breath, I'll still be sheriff. A raven leaped from the marble of a tombstone, flapped its wings near my face, and with a single touch of its beak to my star, showed me a spark of darkness that wasn't mine, an invitation, a trail. I had no doubt there was one of you who isn't an animal, but a king. The ancestor, the one who understands contracts. I repinned the badge to my jacket and felt the burned skin sticking to the metal. I walked out of the cemetery under the procession of wings. They didn't hurt me. They escorted me. Because now I was on the right path, the path that leads to the heart of the soul stealer. And, like it or not, I carried the key inside my chest. I followed the trail of the still-breathing undead to the edge of the cemetery. Each step creaked as if the earth itself were protesting my presence. The air was thick, and the common crows, the smaller ones, no longer dared to call. They only flapped their wings slowly, clearing space, like soldiers retreating to reveal the true general. And that was when I saw him, atop a broken cross, erected over a forgotten grave, sat the largest raven I had ever seen. Its feathers were not just black, they were black as burnt iron, with blue highlights that glinted like cold embers. And its eyes. Its eyes were two globes of living blood. reflecting the moon with a red glow so intense it seemed to pierce me. I felt in my skin that it was no ordinary animal. The star in my chest throbbed again, burning like a knife in a fire. The curse I carry recognized its presence before my mind could name it. It wasn't a bird, it wasn't a beast. It was the ancestor, the one the ancients called upon when they wanted to punish a people, when they wanted to strip the enemy not of its flesh, but of its spark. He opened his beak, and the sound that came out wasn't a call. It was a voice, not a man's voice, nor a woman's, but a distorted human echo, as if 1,000 dead throats were speaking together. The words were unclear, but amid the noise, a name emerged. A name I knew, Elias. The ancient raven called to me, and each syllable hurt like a branding iron piercing my bones. Then he called out other names, scattering them on the wind. I recognized some names of people from Red Hollow who still lived, and also names of the dead. Each time he spoke, one of the living fell into a trance, their eyes staring blankly into space, as if they had answered an invisible call. This was how the raven stole souls. He called them by name, and they came, docile, surrendered, like children responding to their mother's voice. The ground around me trembled, as if ancient tombs were breathing again. I felt a chill in my legs, as if invisible hands were trying to pull me down, inviting me to lie in the earth with those who had gone before. But my curse held me upright. The darkness within me recognized the darkness before me. Two reflections of the same curse. With each beat of its wings, the ancient raven made the moon seem to bleed more heavily. I knew I was standing before the one responsible, not only for the attacks, but for the fate that already hung over Red Hollow. He hadn't come by chance. He had been summoned. Someone, sometime, had called him, and now he was exacting the price. My human instinct told me to shoot, but the curse, that damned companion, whispered to me that gunpowder wouldn't even tickle that creature. There, in the silence of the cemetery, I realized I wasn't facing a bird. I was facing an ancient judge, a reaper of names, a thief of souls, and somehow he already had mine in his beak. I've never seen panic grip Red Hollow so quickly. With each hour, more crows arrived, not dozens, but hundreds, covering the rooftops like a living blanket. The afternoon sun disappeared beneath the swarm, and the entire town was plunged into a darkness that felt like a moonless night. Houses creaked under the weight of the birds. The air stank of sulfur and dust. People ran, but there was nowhere to go. The sky was no longer sky, was a sea of wings. I drew my revolver. The first shot ripped through the silence with force, and one of the crows fell. But it didn't bleed. It merely turned into a shadow for a moment, before rejoining the swarm, as if gunpowder held no weight against it. I fired again. Another disappeared, but returned, whole, as if mocking me. Each bullet only opened space for a few seconds, and then the void closed again. That was when I understood I wasn't fighting flesh, but darkness. The ravens descended in waves, beaks like arrows, wings like razors. I felt cuts on my skin, But it wasn't blood they wanted. They wanted to tear out what was left of me inside. My curse burned. The badge on my chest pulsed like red-hot iron. I held it tightly, and when I lifted the star, it reflected no ordinary light. It shone like a living flame, spitting red flashes that illuminated the swarm. The fire didn't come from the gunpowder. It came from me, from what I carry since the pact I never accepted. I raised the badge to the sky, and the ravens retreated for a moment. Their wings swirled shadows, as if the desert itself were breathing. The ancestor emerged from the cloud, larger than all, his red eyes fixed on me. I felt his hunger, and he felt my curse. I shouted into the night, "If it's my soul you want, come and take it with your own claws." The whole city heard my cry echo like thunder. And in that instant, the duel began, not between man and bird, but between curses that do not belong to this world. The ancient raven swooped down on me like a living shadow. The beating of its wings drowned out all the sounds of the town. And for a moment, Red Hollow seemed already consigned to the afterlife. My hand still gripped the revolver, but I knew gunpowder couldn't kill this thing. What the monster wanted wasn't the trigger, it was in my chest. The star burned as if it were part of my flesh, and I understood. The only weapon I possessed was the very curse that consumed me. I closed my eyes for a moment and let it open like an iron gate creaking on a stormy night. Pain tore through me, but with it came a dark glow, a strength not of this world. The raven swooped down, its beak sinking into the center of my chest. There was no blood. There was silence, a silence so profound it swallowed even the wind. I felt as if a part of me had been ripped away, an invisible piece that had always kept me going. The monster hesitated, pecked again, but then retreated, and in the red reflection of its eyes, I realized my darkness was enough. My soul was no longer whole. It didn't need to take me, because I was already half dead inside, with a core that echoed like the cries of 1,000 human voices. The ancestor spread its wings and retreated. The entire flock rose together, covering the sky in a final swirl, and then disappeared over the horizon, as if it had found a new home in the shadows beyond the desert. I fell to my knees. My breath was still there, but I was no longer the same. Part of me had flown with them, but town sighed with relief that night. But I knew the truth. There was no victory, only truce. And when the last raven returns, it won't come for Red Hollow. It will come for me. So, if you've made it this far, tell me, what would you do if you had to give up part of your soul to save others? Leave your opinion in the comments, because I want to hear your voice. And if this story gave you chills, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click on the next video that's already on screen, before the dark wings also crash into your window.